imagine you're on vacation in Hawaii and it's a beautiful morning on the island of Maui, and you're going on a run. Throughout your run, you start seeing some animals, especially cats. You see one, and then you see some more, and then you see groups of cats. By the end of your 3-mile run, you've now seen about 10 cats. You're probably wondering by that time, where are these cats coming from? Why are they here? What you're actually witnessing is called an invasive species. Now, I understand that the word invasive does have a negative connotation to it, but I'm not here to talk to you today about how good or bad invasive species are. What I am here to talk to you today about, however, is the process in which invasive species can impact environments at different ecological levels. This is important to know because part of these levels is that they can affect us too as humans. So in this presentation, I will introduce you to this species that is invasive in Hawaii, as well as the organisms that they affect and how they can have an ecosystem-wide effect and how that has an effect on humans as well. So feral cats are the invasive species that I'll be talking to you about today. Basically, they're a wild variant of domesticated cats that we see in households, and these are cats that grow up with no type of human connection, and they pretty much almost never have it, so they don't grow up used to it. According to the Hawaiian Invasive Species Council website, these feral cats are present on all islands and also in different parts of the world. In a 2006 publication of the U.S. Geological Services, European explorers brought them in the 1800s. They brought them on their ships in order to keep control of the mice and rats during their voyages, and they did this job very well. Now, when they got to the Hawaiian Islands, they remained here, and by that time, they were one of the largest predatory animals here, or in the Hawaiian Islands. And basically, this leads me to my next point of how they impact native species in Hawaii. So among these includes birds and insects especially. I have 2 examples here of types of birds that they affect and are predators to. The Kalila bird is an endangered species, and feral cats are predators to them, as well as the nene bird, which is basically a Hawaiian goose. Now, feral cats also affect marine mammals as well as humans, and they do this by spreading parasites through their feces. Basically, their feces can contaminate water because it can have those parasites in them, and it can cause a disease called toxoplasmosis. According to an article on the Mayo Clinic's website in 2020, they said that the disease toxoplasmosis can severely affect and harm pregnant women as well as people with suppressed immune systems due to pre-existing conditions. And while it may seem to stop here, that's not at all the case. I'm sure we all remember learning in middle school about how interruptions in food chains can cause pretty much a cascade event in a whole ecosystem. So that leads me to my next point of how invasive species, especially feral cats, can impact whole ecosystems. Their predatory habits can result in extinction of some specific species, especially species that are already endangered. In the book called Invasive Species, Ecology, Management Strategies, and Conservation, Jane Sutton talks about how predatory invasive species can cause extinction, impact whole ecosystems, and because of that, impact the humans that rely on those ecosystems. Now, the human impacts manifest their way through behavior as well as the water and the food that we consume. David Finoff best explains this in his journal article called Invasive Species and Endogenous Risks, which was published in 2010. He describes in it a cyclic impact. where changes in the ecosystem can cause changes in humans' behaviors, especially economically, and because of that, it can cause changes in ecosystems further. Now, this is much more relevant than we give it credit for, invasive species are, and to summarize, today we talked about feral cats, which are the invasive species of Hawaii, the organisms that they affect, and the how they can have an ecosystem-wide effect. And this is much more fascinating than I think we give it credit for, and because it also affects us, I think that we should be learning about it more. So I will now be opening the floor for questions. Yes.
What is the criteria for a species to be considered invasive?
To be considered an invasive species, a species has to be non-native to the place that we're talking about relatively. And whenever they grow or expand, basically, they have to be harmful to other native organisms, and they can also potentially have an economic harm or harm to humans in the area. Is there any other questions?
One more question.
Okay.
Can plants be considered invasive too, or just animals?
Plants can also be considered invasive. For example, a fire tree is an invasive shrub also in Hawaii.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any more questions? Thank you.